Toxic masculinity.
Oregon Democrats to pay black people $123,000
Yeah.
each in
Yeah.
reparations. Why like 120? It's like, well, let's do some random number. 1, 2, 3, like a passcode from nuclear weapon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just do 1, 2, 3. That's it.
1, 2,
Whatever.
3, 0, 0, 0.
Yeah.
It's just like it's somebody in like the Oregon State Legislature's like password to get into all their stuff. 1, 2, 3, 0, 0, 0. Seems good to me. All right. So Democrat state senators in Oregon have introduced legislation to pay black Oregonians $123,000 in reparations. The bill would have the Department of Revenue establish a reparations payment program to residents who can demonstrate heritage in slavery. Man, and have identified as African American for at least 10 years. So you have to, you don't have to be an African American. You just have to identify as an African American. What a weird thing to say. Okay. The Daily Wire reports that according to a copy of the state Senate bill, the government will pay 6 figures to any person who can demonstrate that they are a descendant of American slaves and have identified as African American on legal documents. I grew up with a guy. Yeah, I've had several friends in Oregon that would qualify for this. So I guess good for them, windfall. But this is
So this is for the rest of their life, like 123,000.
Well, it's okay. So in order to qualify for reparations, a person must live in the state for at least 2 years before the application deadline of December 31st, 2022. So when I was talking about this with you, I think you were like, does this mean that like every black person in America is just going to move to Oregon?
Well, 22, they have like a year and a half, I guess. Or they have to move in now and leave. No, it's not 2.
I think they have to be there.
I'm
So they would have had to have moved there already. They would have had to have been there by December 31st, 2020. So I don't think it works. I don't think you can move there now. You have had to have lived there for 2 years before the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So
So even if you will move in now, it's not gonna work.
I don't think so.
Because Democrats, I mean, they want to be like, seems nice to black people, but I don't think they actually want to give money to them.
Well, it would cause the problem that you had suggested, that everybody would just flood there, and I think they know that, and that would be devastating to the economy.
You will just bankrupt the state.
Exactly. So I think that that's the measure they've
The
taken.
next problem that might happen, that other states might do the same thing.
Maybe leftist states may, yeah. Well, Oregon always wants to be the first to do everything.
I was surprised it wasn't California, because California is like an epicenter of every disaster.
We've got an even worse government in Oregon, I think, than California. They may not be quite as corrupt, but they're definitely more leftist to the degree that, like, so we have this governor named Kate Brown, and she is just a disaster, and she's always wanting to do things that are historic. We're gonna sign this historic legislation, and any politician who wants to do things that are historic, to me, that is a terrible way of governing. It's like, no.
Let's do the historical level of poverty this year. You know?
Exactly.
Please don't die.
Yeah, you're gonna kill me here. No, look. Okay, you know what's better than doing something that's historic? Improving people's quality.
You know what
of life.
was historical that everyone will remember forever? That while Trump's presidency, that was a historical low black people's unemployment.
Yeah. Low poverty.
That's historical.
Low poverty. High, like what Trump did for America, improving our quality of life, improving our economic situation, that was historic in a good way. What this woman is doing is she's doing things that she thinks will be historic as a kind of way of establishing herself in the history books. And it's like, nobody's going to care about your environmental legislation. Nobody cares about the environmental legislation of Oregon. You're not making a huge impact on the world, lady. We're signing this historic legislation. You're not doing any good to the world at all. Nobody cares. In 100 years, nobody's going to read the history books. Oregon was the first to pass this historic environmental legislation. No. In 2 years, nobody's even going to remember that you did this. So, like, all of her, like, far left radical crap that's destroying the state. The problem is she doesn't realize the implications of what she does. You know, and none of the politicians in Oregon do. And they're just morons. They're trying to do something that's going to catch headlines go viral and get them news coverage like we're giving them now, but we're doing it in a way that ridicules them mercilessly. So I think it's okay. Let's see here. The payment would be an annuity where recipients would receive $123,000 paid out over the course of their life plus interest. The Daily Wire report says the average black man in his lifespan has a lifespan of 75 years. So if a 30-year-old black man applies for reparations, he would receive a yearly payment of approximately $2,733 a year for the Oregon government from the Oregon government. If the recipient receives a 5% interest rate on reparations money, he could receive up to $2,870 per year. But here's the funny thing about black people in Oregon. Black people in Oregon aren't really like black people elsewhere, from what I understand. So I didn't grow up anywhere else. Obviously, I just grew up in Oregon. So I don't know what black people are like in Detroit or Philadelphia or New York or anything like that. Even though I have lived in New York, I've lived in Miami. But from what I kind of like, what it seems like to me is that in many of the cities in the country, black people live in black communities, and they become culturally much more distinctly like culturally black. And they have, different cultures have different value systems, and they have different attitudes, and they have different priorities and stuff like that. And so, but in Oregon, you don't really, okay, maybe in Portland a little bit, but for the most part in Oregon, at least the black people that I grew up with, were culturally indistinguishable from white people. Like, you never really thought much about the difference between black people and white people in Oregon, at least where I grew up in Salem. So this idea that the black people in Oregon were oppressed or something like that, it's absolutely just not true. You just don't find
Black people in Oregon?
well, not many, no. But the ones that you do find, they're not particularly poor necessarily. You don't, like, where I was growing up, if you met a black person, I would not necessarily have expected them to be poor. Like, they would have been probably just as well off as anybody else, maybe better off, maybe poorer. I don't know. You didn't even really think about it. Yeah, I didn't really think much about it. I didn't know. People seemed pretty much the same, in Oregon, you definitely do have some different, like, places, like certain kinds of places like Eugene, maybe, where you have certain, where the wealthier people maybe look down on the lower income people. But that's because Eugene's mostly Democrats. And in Portland, you get some snobby people like that. But for the most part in Oregon, people are very practical, pragmatic people, down-to-earth people. And, they don't really talk about money and stuff. Most people are just middle class. And even if you're poor, most people have good self-esteem. And it's not the same kind of play. Like, the black people in Oregon are not oppressed. I mean, if there was any kind of oppression, it was a long time ago. Certainly not within my lifetime. So the idea that the people today deserve reparations, like my buddy Ryan that I grew up with deserves reparations. I mean, it's a bizarre idea, because I'm just picturing us riding bikes in the neighborhoods together as kids, and like the difference between our experience in school was negligible. Like, we were both not particularly popular. We had bullies that didn't like us and stuff like that. And I don't know. We're just normal kids together. And then, like, we grow up, and then one of us, because he's born black, gets a nice fat check every year for almost $3,000, and the other one of us just doesn't, because
So it's just like around 3,000 a year.
Almost 3,000 a year. That's their estimate for this particular case. But it seems probably something like that. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just a silly. Giving people money because of the color of their skin, because they can trace their ancestry back to somebody who suffered. All of us can trace our ancestry back to somebody who suffered.
Well, you already have to pay. How much money you have to pay for tracing your ancestors to 50? It's already minus
those DNA things. Yeah, I guess, yeah. So it's an investment for sure. All right. Anyway, paying people money because of the color of their skin is a disaster. It's a mistake. It's racist, and it's stupid. Do you need to say something?
Is there still sound on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why, is somebody complaining?
Yeah.
Are lots of people complaining?
No.
Let me look. We have a super chat. Do you
Yeah,
want to take it?
I know. But we have a sound. Everything is right.
Yeah, we have sound. Yeah, I know.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, super chat. My from Daniel. Daniel, is he giving us money again? Daniel, stop it.
Daniel, stop.
My grandmother and grandfather are immigrants from Sicily.
Ah, yeah.
Why should I have to pay reparation?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that's a really good point. My family all came here after the slave days. I think my great grandfather, great grandfather, came here sort of at the like during the Civil War, actually, like or just before the Civil War, and he moved to Minnesota where they didn't have slaves, and then they moved to Washington State where they didn't have slaves. So that was on my dad's side. On my mom's side, her father, her lineage, they all moved here after that as well. We all moved here after slavery, but before World War II. So we can't be blamed for that either, even though we are German. We moved here, but we fought on the good side. So yeah, my family is completely clean. We don't have any kind of, there's no blood on our hands, and yet it would be my tax money, or at least the tax money of my family, that would be going to these black Oregonians. And why? Why are they paying for them? They didn't. The attribution of guilt and victimhood is absurd. This is what I always say. This is a pretty provocative thing that I mention sometimes. Is a lot of the slaves and the masters had kids together, right? Because the masters would sometimes want to interbreed some like white genetics into their slave. There was this idea that would make them better behaved if they were the father of some of the slave kids, right? So some slave owners actually slept with the slaves to get these sort of half black, half white kids. It's kind of a weird thing back then. But anyway, so a lot of these black people today in America, I wouldn't say a lot of them, I would say probably all of them, probably every black person in America to some degree has slave owner ancestry. So I always think, like, instead of reparations from white people, I think you should pay reparations to yourself. Like, that part of you that's a slave owner should just pay the part of you that was a slave. And then it all balances out. Okay, reparations, done. The other thing that I think about this, which is really frustrating, is that we've paid reparations, guys, okay? Think about every black charity in America that specifically goes to black people, black scholarships, all kinds of stuff for black people, right? And there's no stuff specifically for white people. Well, that goes to reparations. Think about all the blood that was shed in the Civil War to free the slaves. That could be considered reparations. All the people that died, all the people that are paralyzed, all the people that suffered in the Civil War, that goes to reparations. Now, think about, what was it? Black Lives Matter got 90 million, they said, or something like that. Was it 90 million?
Lots of money.
Just an obscene amount of money last year, and I don't even think they reported it all. I think they got well more than 90 million. But they said they got 90 million. Okay, there's your reparations to Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, it's on you guys now to redistribute that wealth that we gave you, because most of that money came from white people.
For white people. Democrats.
Yeah, from Democrats specifically. But it's Democrats that are calling for reparations, so I think it's incumbent upon them to pay those reparations, which I think is fine. If you think that those are the taxes that you want to pay, you can pay them, but don't force Republicans to, because we don't think that we owe that money. But thank you for that super chat. I think that is straight up accurate. Okay, so let's move on to the next story, shall we? Because I think
I changed my mind about daylight saving time because I just meant because I feel like I'm sleeping 1 hour less, but
ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for Random Thoughts with Valeria.
So I realized that we always shoot at the same time. But now it's more light.
Yeah.
It's bright. I look more beautiful. You look handsome. And not just this. Door is closed because there is so much light. You don't need to open the door. So it's not cold. Yeah. And cat is not meowing because the door is open. So everything is perfect.
That's true. Ladies and gentlemen, it did reach way down to the depths of, I think, like 68 here today.
It's
my God,
freezing.
in California.
Freezing.
No, it's not 68. It probably Alexa, what's the temperature outside?
Here you go. 56.
Good God. There are people that are driving around on black ice somewhere in America right now going, you a-holes. Hey, 56 is cold for California when you're not used to it.
For me, everything below 75 is cold. Okay.
Yeah, we know those Russians can't stand the cold.
Why do you think I'm here?
All right, well, let's move on. Let's move on to the next story, okay?
Okay. Biden plans largest tax hike in 30 years.
Yeah.
What does
I didn't
that
actually
mean?
get a chance to read this story, so I'm going to be just as fascinated as everyone.
Toxic Masculinity. Weekdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.